No? Hello, my name is Petra Halkes. I would like to welcome all of you, especially our guests from faraway Australia.
India.
And India. If there's one good thing about Zoom, it is that we can make these connections with artists in faraway places now, and it's so easy. Let me say a few words about RIA Research in Art, a program of exhibitions and gatherings featuring presentations by local artists who talk about their travels and residencies outside of our city. These salons, as we called them, took place in our home here in Ottawa, where my husband, René Price, and I live. They started in 2006 and lasted till 2019. It was the climate crisis that impelled RIA to focus on art and systems change. And it was the pandemic that forced our organization into the clouds for virtual salons. So here we are this evening and this Saturday morning in Adelaide. I will be passing on the mic. Oh yeah, and it's 5:30, I think, in India, right? I will be passing on the mic now to, okay, no. My task here tonight is to pass on the mic and moderate the questions. I would like to thank Maria Gomez-Umana, and also Michael Davidge, both from the Ottawa Art Gallery, who are, well, as you see, Maria is here and helping us with the technical part, and Michael is very supportive as well. And I also would like to thank Judith, the independent curator and writer, who initiated this connection with the Australian artist. And I will now pass the mic on to her. Judith?
Thank you very much, Petra. Delighted to be invited by you. So I'm going to read my notes as well. And first of all, I would like to respectfully acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe, protectors of the land and the Kitchissippi Great River since time immemorial. I recognize the City of Ottawa's closest First Nation communities, Kitigan-Zibi, Maniwaki to the north, and Pikwakanagan, Golden Lake to the west. Personally, I commit to engaging in the process of truth and reconciliation to build a continuing relationship with Indigenous people through friendship, teachings, and learning. So how did I get involved with Andrea's marvelous project? Well, my role in the project was to write a commentary for the exhibition catalogue. However, my connection with Andrea started many years ago in Banff in 2009, where I met Andrea Przygonski. We were both doing self-directed residencies, and mine was researching the impact of Ottawa artist Dennis Tourbin on his own residency in Paris. And now to the exhibition. Presumably you can hear me clearly. If not, just say something. Okay, so fast forward 11 years to December 2020, when Andrea, who had since completed an MFA at the Art Institute of Chicago and was active as an artist and curator, invited me via social media to write an essay for her international collaborative exhibition, Sister City 2. She said it would take place in 15 months' time in her home city of Adelaide in April 2022. So this was an unusual challenge. And I knew I wouldn't be able to see the actual works of art in order to write about them. But of course I was tempted. It was a perfect pandemic project. And we connected virtually for 15 months in Zoom meetings where I could hear and engage in artistic discussions while I was in lockdown and feeling very isolated. And so I met 18 new artists who were working in 9 collaborative pairs, each woman on a different continent. It was astonishing to witness their daring experiments to creatively collaborate while we were all caught in the disaster of being both in a pandemic and an ongoing climate crisis. And theirs was a collaborative process unlike any other I had seen. And I particularly applaud Andrea's commitment to work with women artists only. I felt that she was keeping the legacy of the Guerrilla Girls alive in the 21st century. So my essay, which has a long title, Pivoting to the Rhythm of Change, an intercontinental collaborative journey in an unprecedented time, I tried to capture aspects of the international creative process and the broad issues about climate change that were being addressed by some of the artist collaborative pairs. But I was also very moved by the personal moments that we shared in isolation around, across the globe, different parts of Australia, Shantala in India, various parts of the US, East Coast, West Coast, and somewhat in the middle. So since Andrea had recorded all the Zoom meetings, I was able to listen in and transcribe some quotes from these conversations, which I put into the essay. And I feel that these kind of provide something of an archival context, which, I don't know, I'm sort of kind of astonished that I've sort of forgotten much of what happened during the pandemic. I think, want to move beyond that pretty fast, I guess. And so I just wanted to say that this approach of including the quotes was, I think, partly inspired by Dennis Tourbin's art, in which he painted fragments of newspaper headlines as his artwork. So I'm just going to quote you about 5 quotes that I decided were giving sort of a good flavor to what we went through in those 15 months. So August 2020, in the Gammon Ranges, South Australia, there has been more than a drought. The environment is dead. There are bones and dead animals everywhere. No animals are alive. No plants or trees are alive. Second quote, again, August 2020. In the USA, the pandemic is atrocious. Only the privileged are safe. People who live in densely populated areas or who can't afford to stay home from work, they are dying. My third quote, September 2020. My daughter is going into hospital for a serious operation. None of the family can be with her because it's in Melbourne, another state, and the borders are closed. Okay, my fourth quote, July 2021. Raspberries baked on the vine during a heat wave in British Columbia. The temperature was 45 degrees Celsius, 20 degrees above normal. And my fifth quote, February 2022. In flooded South Australia, roads are washed away. Communities are cut off. Animals and plants are rejoicing. And there are other quotes which I'm not going to read now. Last but not least, I learned a new word from Andrea, shero, a woman regarded as a hero who fights for women's issues. I would just like to say that Andrea and the 18 artists in Sister City 2 are my sheroes. Thank you very much. And over to you, Andrea.
Thank you. Yes, they are sheroes, all of them. Thank you so much, Petra and Maria, for organising this, and Judith. It's a real privilege to be able to speak to a whole group of new people, really, meeting across the world. It's wonderful. I'm going to use some notes too. Firstly, though, I would like to acknowledge the Kaurna people on the land of which I live and work and play, and recognise their connection to country. And I'd also like to recognise Indigenous and First Nations people from across the globe. So I'll just give you a bit of a background on how this whole thing kind of came about, the seed of the idea. I was in a car travelling for hours backwards and forwards to Mildura, which is a regional town in Victoria, just over the border from South Australia. And I had this thought in my mind. I kept thinking about how do I put women forward? We tend to be a little bit in the background in the art world. It's interesting that there's quite a lot of women that do art compared to men, I believe, and yet we are quite underrepresented in museums and galleries and prizes and things like that. So I thought, right, let's try and put women into the forefront of the community, the art community. And the second part of this was, after my studies in Chicago, when I came home, I mean, as we all know, when you make connections overseas or interstate, it's all very exciting, but you know, when you leave, they tend to drift away. So that was the other part, that I really wanted to make sure that I could somehow keep those connections going over time. Judith and I had met in Banff, as she's mentioned, and I also met Gwen at the same time, Gwen Davies, who's with us today, at the same time. We had a blast while we were there, and we've kind of kept in touch over the years sporadically. So it was about really connecting that. Also, I had the great privilege of being able to go overseas and study and do residencies, and a lot of people don't get that opportunity. So it was also about me sharing my contacts as well, and somehow this whole idea came together. This is what I can do. I can connect everybody that I respect and admire, that I've met overseas, people that I've met along the way in my career in Australia, and somehow connect them up and turn this into a project, a showing of community and connection. So the first iteration was in 2016, 2018, and I invited 11 pairs, so 22 artists in total, and we did 2 exhibitions and published a catalogue. That was a huge task, and something that I'd really never done anything quite so huge before. So it was somewhat of a challenge, I have to tell you, but I learned a great deal. And I also participated in that first one, teamed up with an artist from California, Victoria May, who's a textile artist. We'd never met before. And that's part of the project as well. It's about developing the relationships. A lot of these artists didn't know each other. And so I was asking them to pair together and work together. So it was kind of an interesting thing, watching the artists connect with each other, work through their ideas and actually create the work. So fast forward to 2020, and I had a number of approaches from people from around the country. When are you going to do Sister City again? We love that idea. Can we be a part of it? And it's like, okay, well, maybe I better do it again. And I'd kind of forgotten how huge the project was, but I thought, oh, well, I'll just give it another go. This time, though, because I'd learned so much from the first one, I'd reduced the number of artists slightly, and I'd made some sharper curatorial decisions when I was selecting the artists. And I also secured an exceptional gallery space here to host the exhibition. So off I went mid-2020 and invited a bunch of artists, 18 of them, to be involved, and who knew what was about to really hit us hard. But the project proved to be a perfect pandemic panacea, really. And it was a lifeline for many of the artists as we continued to be locked down and isolated. So the monthly meetings were well attended, and people look forward to these meetings. And as we met each time, our connections to each other grew slowly. We discussed ideas, the progress of the work. We critiqued each other where it was requested, and generally just had a bit of a catch up. You know, we were talking about storms and droughts and spiders and snakes and birds and all sorts of things, bats. It was just really lovely for me to watch the connections between everyone grow over that time. Some of the artists were a little bit apprehensive about collaborating, but you know, they stuck with it. I'll give them credit. There's a couple that were really, I don't know about this. Oh, I've never done it before. Okay, I'll give it a try. But they weren't particularly enthusiastic, and I just, you know, keep going. And all of a sudden there was this kind of light bulb moment, and by the end of the project, everyone had really embraced the whole mechanism with great gusto. So I'm very grateful for the time that I got to spend with these women again, and to see the incredible outcomes of their work. If I can, am I able to just share, Maria, my screen? I'm allowed to do that, aren't I? I can do that.
Yes, everyone who wants to share the screen, you may.
Yeah, okay. So I'm just going to do a very quick kind of showing of, it's nothing fancy, so it'll just be just a quick running through images. Let me just get that up and view in full screen. Oh, hang on, I've got to do that first. Share my screen first. Share screen, here we go. Share desktop, and here we go. Okay. So if you've seen the catalogue already, this is on the back of the catalogue. This is a wonderful picture by Gillian Samitas and Linda Cowie, The Drowning Tree. And there's a partner to this particular picture as well, which I'm sure Gillian will talk about later. And it was the subject of a beautiful musical piece that this American composer wrote after he'd seen the image, and he approached Gillian and Lindy to see if he could actually write a score for this particular piece. So it was absolutely beautiful. But, you know, it shows the devastation of what was going on at the time. Here's the textile work that Victoria May and I put together with some laser cut fabrics and hand stitching, and some detritus that's been collected from the oceans and the rivers. This is a work by Sandra Starkey-Simon and Fanny Retzek, who comes from California, and they were talking about, you know, the ecology of bats and deforestation and loss of habitat. This is a beautiful installation. What's going on here? Let's see. Oh, nothing's happening there. What's happened? Sorry, everyone. So this might be jumping all around the place now, but just bear with me. Can everyone see those images okay? Yeah. This is Rachel Single, and Rachel made the most incredible paper, and I'm sure she'll talk a bit more about it, so I won't go into great detail, but here she is harvesting some, I think it was a yellow flag iris from the waterways, and she turned that into paper, which became a beautiful works for the exhibition. We have Louise Holmes and Alyssa Beach. I taught Alyssa in Chicago, so it was lovely to have her as part of this exhibition. Louise lives in the Blue Mountains, so this was their contribution to the work. Louise uses a lot of old maps in her work. Oh, that's me contemplating the install, which was trying to get a 800 kilo stone through the front door. I was thinking about that. That's me installing some of the work that Victoria and I created. You'll see that there's a lot of kind of lines and things in there. That's actually rope and junk that I collected from the ocean, Southern Ocean. This is the bats installation with Sandra in front, so that you get to see the whole installation in the gallery. It's beautiful work. And there's Fanny, the other artist. And there's Chantalar in front of the wall of her work with Jackie Goring. We were so lucky to have Chantalar actually come to Adelaide. It was an absolute treat to have her come for the exhibition, and we spent some time together. Chantalar was in a printmaking class that I was co-teaching in Chicago as well, so it was lovely to have her involved. Hannah Williams, an Adelaide printmaker, with some of her work behind. Sweetie. There's Gillian in front of some of her work, but I'll let her talk about that. We did a bunch of interviews, which are unfortunately we've had some technical issues and we've kind of lost those at the moment. We're trying to retrieve them. Oh, sorry, there's Bronwyn in front of her work. Bronwyn collaborated with Gwen, who's with us today. And Gwen wrote a beautiful petite novella and illustrated beautifully by Bronwyn. There's the 800 kilo stone that we managed to get into, which was hand carved by Christine Holeva. Christine's originally from Toronto and she moved to Adelaide. She's now a citizen, glass artist actually, but she turned her hand to stone. And the prints are by Andy Silver from Canada, and she did some monotypes and lino prints there to complement the work. Here's Gwen and Bronwyn's, the cover of the petite novella. And this is Floating and Fathomless, which is my and Victoria's work. And we took this very haunting picture in the dark of the fabrics. It kind of looks sinister, but it's also, you know, it says what it means about the oceans and the drama and the you know, the oil slicks and everything that happens to our beautiful oceans. Yet it's just such a beautiful thing to look at too. But yeah, it's haunting for sure, if I'm allowed to say that about my own work. But I just think it really resonates with me when we got it up in that space. It's interesting how it looks different in different spaces. But yeah, this space really complemented that work beautifully. More bats. How am I going for time? This is Jackie Goring and Chantalar. I'm sure Chantalar will explain the process of this, but it's a hybrid, very hybridized piece. And this is quite large, maybe 1.5 meters, I think it was. Yeah, very, very big piece. collage, Louise. Oh, here we are moving the rock in with helpers. So the Christine lives around the corner from the gallery, and so she actually walked the stone to the gallery early in the morning, and then we got it installed. So that was great fun. Some more of Bronwyn's prints and her sticks. Some of Hannah and Sally Ketchum's works around forests, the underneath of forests, the lichens and the silent processes. Jackie and Chantalar's wall of works. This is just giving you some install views and details. Just beautiful woven. They're actually woven Chicago Transit cards, which Alyssa had been collecting over years and years. So she sent them to Louise, and Louise injected them into this mat. There's some beautiful detail. This is an etched fabric. Beautiful shadows. The whole of the installation, Gwen and Bronwyn. Here's some of the paper that Rachel made, along with Gail Hocking and her electroplated box thorns. So we're talking about weeds. This was a drift, which is work that Victoria and I made. And basically that we're just talking about all the styrofoam that ends up in our waterways. And that's it. So there are some quick snippets of information about the works. And I'm wondering if, Maria, we can show that video of the time-lapse video at all?
Yes. So do you want to stop sharing and I will present it on my screen?
Yeah, now I'm trying to actually open up Zoom again. How am I going to do that? It seems to have minimized itself. Stop. Got it. Okay. Great, thanks.
Okay.
So this time, the time lapse that Maria is going to play was taken over the whole week of the install, but it's like 47 seconds or something. That's really interesting.
Okay.
So there were I think there was 112 pieces of work that had to be hung. So it was a big job, but it proved to be a very successful exhibition in so many ways, not just the outcomes. It was really about the relationships and the wonderful women. Those women, they're amazing. They are real sheroes. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, that was a very fast setup, super fast. I don't know, Maria, or Judith, where do we go from here? Were there more presentations to come from Australia, or?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good. Then who is going to be the next one?
Me. I'm going to share a slideshow with you as well, so I can guide you through through this. I'm Gillian Semitis, and I'm a full-time artist from Perth, Western Australia. I'm a printmaker and I'm a photographer. I was very happy when Andrea invited me to be part of the Sister City 2 project. This is Andrea and I. We were interviewed by a local West Australian radio station, RTR, which is an art beat program. So we both did that from Western Australia and South Australia, which was wonderful to be doing that with Andrea as there. And Andrea and I first met in early 2019 when I was over in Adelaide for a printmaking workshop. We had a mutual friend who was a printmaker, Ragini from Nepal. So that's when I first met Andrea and the other Batondi printmakers in South Australia. So I decided to invite Lindy Cowie from the USA to be my collaborative partner. We first met in Japan. We were exhibiting together in late 2019, and I really admired Lindy's paintings, which were about environment and climate change. I also have a love of nature and environment, and I work a lot with trees in my photography and printmaking. Living in Western Australia during COVID times, we were living in a bubble. It was isolated from other parts of Australia and the rest of the world. Our state borders were closed and no one was allowed in or out for 2 years. Lindy Cowie, she jumped at the chance when I asked her to be part of this amazing collaborative project and be my creative partner. Lindy shares her time between Los Angeles and New York State. She has a beautiful studio in which is a red barn built in 1843, and that's in her property, beautiful property in New York State. Lindy previously worked as a designer for Walt Disney, but now she's a full-time artist and you know, loves her painting. So this is Fire Escape. This is the work that Judith mentioned earlier, that we were actually contacted by a musician, a classical musician from New York, and he saw this work, and through Andrea, he said he was very inspired by the work and he'd like to compose a classical piece to perform in a concert that he was doing in New York. So Lindy and I thought that would be wonderful, and it was a really beautiful, I'm sorry I haven't got it to share with you, but I can share it later, beautiful classical piano piece that it just really was very moving, and I think he composed it very well to the artwork. And it was actually quite good. I was able to watch it from Perth, Western Australia, as it was being the performance from New York online, so it was wonderful. Lindy and I first met, spent many hours on Zoom meetings as partners and as a group. And our first thoughts when we were starting off the collaboration, we thought, how are we going to do it? Because, you know, she's a painter, I'm a printmaker and photographer. And we thought, what can we do? So we decided that we'd come up with a list of words of how we were feeling at the time. And then we ended up using these words. We brought them back into one of our final pieces at the end. It became text as part of one of the artworks. At the beginning of the project, it was in early 2020, and Western Australia, we had terrible bushfires. The skies and the sun were red. It was like a red big ball, and we're in lockdown because of COVID. We had falling ash falling around us. It was a very surreal feeling. And California at the time also had fires, they had COVID, they had Trump. And so Lindy and I, we shared our work and ideas back and forth digitally, and we did a call and response with the works, and that worked quite well. I first shared one of my black and white photographs with Lindy of a scorched melaleuca tree from a bushfire in Western Australia. And then Lindy used paint, collage and printmaking techniques, and then she photographed that work and then shared it digitally back to me. Then I took those digital images and then I laid them up on in producing more work, and then using our individual works and our collaborative works, and then Lindy and I would just share our ideas as we would go along. And this is Fire Escape, and it's one of our first collaborative works. And as you can see, we've used the photography, printmaking, paint and collage. And the final work was printed as a digital artwork on fine art paper. And this is Drowning Tree. So Drowning Tree was the next work in our collaboration. And both Australia and US at the time were experiencing devastating floods. So the next work we thought should deal with the opposite of fire, water. So we used a similar approach to Fire Escape, where Lindy painted with inks and paint directly onto a print of my photograph of the tree. And to our surprise, this image has become quite iconic and has been attracting a lot of attention. So, you know, it's really, I think it speaks quite a bit. I've even been approached by a musician that's quite interested in this becoming a cover of a jazz album. So, you know, it's really very powerful piece, I think. So this work is called We Mark Time by Our Seasons. It's one work, but it's created out of 9 individual parts. It's a work that reads as a narrative from left to right. It's a giclée print that's printed on canvas, and the overall work is about 3 meters in length, which is about 9 feet. This is Falling Ash, one of the pieces that makes up the whole work. Each canvas is 30 centimeters square. That's 12 inches by 12 inches. And as you can see, a single image of my tree photograph forms the basis of each repetition. And then each canvas takes a unique approach to responding to the text on each one, which came from our original list of words. Time for space. I applied multiple image layers of our individual and collaborative artworks, including fragments of Charles Darwin's book, Origin of Species, also aerial photography of the northwest of Western Australia, and other textures. And this one is called Begin Again. This is the final piece in this particular artwork, so it ends on a positive. The smaller text you can see at the bottom on this particular one, but this one comes from Charles Darwin's book. So this is so simple a beginning, endless forms, so beautiful and most wonderful have been and are being evolved. And as Lindy and I met in Japan, there's also a feeling with the blossoms of Japan and a new beginning. So I think it's a positive to think we can change if we make an effort. And this work was actually resolved and completed in Perth and then freighted to Adelaide for the exhibition. This work is called Ghost Trees. It's a triptych. It's in 3 separate parts. It's printed from Chromolux on aluminium and painted plexiglass. The centerpiece has a layer of the plexiglass, and it works really well together, I think, as a one piece, the three pieces. And this one was resolved and completed in New York and freighted directly to Adelaide as well for our exhibition. We felt that there weren't that many challenges as we connected on Zoom, email, and over the phone, and we adapted to change. As we faced some challenges, we'd find new ways of working. Communication was a bit hard at times because of the time differences. It was like 12 hours difference or 15 hours difference, depending on where Lindy was at the time, and also opposite seasons, winter, summer. And then I had a bit of a challenge getting the final work to Adelaide for the exhibition. There were really devastating floods in South Australia at the time. So the transport trucks between us, our states, were stuck on the Nullarbor Desert. So between Western Australia and South Australia. So I resolved this by rolling up the canvases and mailing them to a framer in Adelaide so that they'd be ready for the exhibition when I arrived, because I was very happy to be going over to be part of it all. There were so many highlights. Working with Andrea, Lindy, and the other artists on our monthly Zoom meetings were always so positive and uplifting, and I always felt very inspired. So it was a really wonderful connection when we're all going through difficult times. So that was wonderful. And Lindy and I both felt that the collaboration together really was a positive thing, because it extended our individual art practices and gave us new pathways in our own individual art practice as well to move forward with, which was wonderful. And one of the biggest highlights was seeing the exhibition and seeing all our work, all these wonderful artists' work together hanging, and it just looks so beautiful. And that's a big thank you to Andrea for all her hard work as well, because, you know, she was so incredible. And I'd like to say a big thank you to Andrea for guiding us through this incredible project, and for all she did for us. And also to Judith for her amazing essay. It was incredible. And the other amazing artists as well. And it's just been such a positive thing to be part of this project. It was a really wonderful thing to be part of for those few years, and to meet such incredible people as well. And thank you so much for inviting me to be part of the Salon today. It's been wonderful hearing everything too. So thank you.
I love that picture of you, Jill.
Oh, oh, thank you, Andrea.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
I'm not sure. This is, some of these pictures really stuck with me because of what we've heard of Australia and what was happening there. Yeah, I don't know if there are any other artists talking about their art or here. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So who are we going to, Andrea? Who are we going to listen and see next?
Oh, well, why don't we hear from Gwen and Bronwyn, maybe? Unmute.
There.
Okay. Also, in terms of time, we had thought that the presentations would go until about, what was it, 8:30. Oh, another, what time is it now?
8:30.
Yeah.
No, it's 10, part after 8.
Yeah, and another 25 minutes, but we could go longer and make the question period shorter because we're getting a lot here. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, because we've got Bronwyn and Gwen, and then Shantala and Rachel. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, ladies, we might have to be speedy.
Yes, that's fine.
It's okay. It's okay. We don't need that. We can shorten the questions. Okay. So here we go.
Well, I'll start by saying that we made our path by walking. I'm a writer, and Bronwyn's a visual artist, And we each had sort of an idea, but mostly we had an idea of what we did not want to do, which was write a story and illustrate it, or illustrate something and write a story about it. So then there we were going, so what will we do? And we struggled and struggled and struggled, and sometimes it was unpleasant even. And then we talk to each other and try and sort it out. And finally we had a breakthrough, and I can't remember, I think it was just because we both got so aggravated with not being able to come up with something that would work for both of us. And then Bronwyn, I'll turn it over to you because you had this big breakthrough. I did at the same time, but hers was more dramatic. So
I had been making small black and white prints of my local area because our horizons were very limited. Also, it's kind of strange to be making images to which someone will add a story after the fact. It's usually the other way around. So when I'd say, Gwen, write something. I don't know what I'm doing. I am lost. And then I had a dream one morning that I was going to make clothes out of prints. So I did that, and it was like, well, the characters inhabited the clothes almost. I think that's kind of might have been what happened. I don't know. But I ended up expanding past this little tiny square format into this world of the clothing that represented the people that I spent the most time with, which was my family, and they also became the characters that Gwen wrote about, and also I ended up covering a whole lot of sticks with prints, so I ended up rambling over into sculpture, which I've never done before. So the whole thing was a huge adventure, and it profoundly affected my work, and it was such a wonderful project to be part of. Gwen.
okay, so I didn't want to write just little pieces of writing that would end up being put onto images. I wanted to write a story because that's what I do. I write stories. So when I write a story, it takes a while. I make that path by walking always. And I'm working with ideas and images and Bronwyn and time and other constraints of my own. And I can't really send anything for Bronwyn to work with until I know what I'm working with myself. And what I'm working with myself doesn't happen until an idea congeals, and that's fairly far into a story. So there we were working away, trying to support each other and trying to come to grips with our own processes. And around the time when she had her dream, I suddenly got a story, and I took it to my writers group, who said, okay, you got way too much going on here for an art gallery presentation, and trim it down and just do this part of it. So suddenly I had something pretty clear to work with, and I sent Bronwyn the story, and then we just kind of then began to, we were working separately, but it began to weave back and forth. And then you got out your wedding dress. That was pretty fun.
Yeah, it's interesting you say walking, because of course in the 5 kilometre zone, we weren't allowed to do anything much except to go for a walk, and going for a walk every day was like the highlight of my existence almost. And then I'd come back and work on my artwork. But also Gwen actually did send me little thoughts and ideas. Like one was meeting this person at the railway station. I really loved that image. It was incredibly inspiring. And another thing that you talked about was your character going around on his bike and collecting materials and building it like a tree house in the backyard, which I also really loved that idea and wanted to do it in my backyard too. So there was, although I didn't have a whole story, it was just all these little ethereal wisps and suggestions, and you'd run off with it, and I would send you the pictures, and then you'd come back with another idea, and it was extremely kind of ethereal. And I think that the final visual presentation has kind of a wraith-like or a ghostly feeling about it. And I think that the story is a little bit like that too. So
the story ended up being about two people who were one person visiting from Montreal to Halifax, and the two of them are going off on a bicycle trip that is suddenly bicycle camping trip in April, and suddenly canceled. And they're in this tiny apartment that they never meant to share. And then the landlord downstairs comes back from where he's been visiting his parents in Bhutan, and the three of them work out a way. The fellow from Montreal is a set builder, and he ends up building a theater from collected pieces that he finds in the streets. And then he'll take the car out late at night because everybody's renovating. There's wood all over the place. There's all kinds of cabinets and wood and doors and all these things. And he puts them together and makes a theater. And they end up, as the time progresses in isolation, they end up becoming a bubble, of course. And they decide, the woman decides that they're going to do a dinner theater in this theater space and in their backyard for the three of them. And they each do a night when they cook something, but they do an art sort of engagement art piece while they're there, engaging the other two in creating the I guess something out of the suggestions of whatever the person who's cooked the meal brings along to suggest. So that's where the story goes. And then eventually I recorded the story, which was really fun. I really like reading aloud. So that was pretty much I would say that's enough for me, but do you have anything else to add, Rodman?
I'd just like to say that what you've described there was kind of like the reality of our life, because we were living in a tiny space, the three of us jammed together, and each of my garments represented each of the three characters, and living three people in a small space like that does often feel like a daily drama. So and also cooking became extremely important. Yeah.
Anyway, we've I think loved each other deeply by the time we were done.
Yes. And we've enjoyed having the post-COVID and post-exhibition chats. And ours was a fairly kind of small and personal view, but it still reflects the world that changed because of the huge events happening around us, like, you know, the pandemic, climate change, etc. So we didn't have that universal view that a lot of the other artists had, but it still was very much connected to what was going on in the whole world. So I am so grateful to have been part of this, and it's had a profound effect on my practice.
And me too. A meeting with everyone regularly was profound this time.
Yeah, really amazing.
And so grateful, Andrea, to
Yes.
have met you and be able to collaborate with this project. So changed my own work dramatically.
Yeah, I've seen that change. It's really interesting. Just for the others, Gwen was actually part of the first group as well. So she's been in both Sister City projects, and it's really interesting to see the difference and the strength that's come out of this particular story is just wonderful. And I loved your reading of it. I loved it.
Thank you.
Just wanted to mention that if you go in the chat, the petite novella Belle and Sam Play the Pandemic is posted there. So before the chat leaves, if you want it, download it, everybody who's listening.
So Shantala, would you like to speak now? Is that okay, Petra? I'm just kind of taking over now. I can't see you.
Petra,
Oh,
you're
you're on mute.
unmute.
Yes,
Yes.
sorry about that. Yes, I would like to pass the mic on to your next collaborative team there, Andrea.
Yes, thank you, Petra.
Thank you.
Shantala, thank you for staying awake, and unmute, and we'll love to hear from you.
So should I start? Or
Yes, please. Yes.
okay, so I'll just share the slides so that you can see what I'm saying, and then at the same time I'll just share the pictures. So I just want to say thank you again, Judith, and everyone from Canada for inviting us for the show. And of course, lots of love to Andrea and to all our sisters for this exhibition. So let me just share the screen. That'll be better. My voice is like totally this thing. So I'll just share the screen for a minute. Just give me a second. Okay. So this was, so as you can see from my slideshow, so I paired up with Jackie Goring, who was a printmaker from Victoria, Australia. And I'm an artist and a teacher in a private school from Delhi. So here, this is when, so when I got to know that Judith was inviting us, I was very happy. I said, I will definitely be a part of it. So there were so Sister City exhibition is very dear to me, as you can see. First, it was my first collaboration with on an international level. Second, working with Andrea, like Andrea mentioned, we had met together at the School of the Art Institute, where I did my painting and drawing. And I met Andrea in one of the printmaking classes. And from there, we kind of kept in touch. And also, I moved to Adelaide for a few months. And so we continue to keep in touch there. So Adelaide will always be I think, one of my favorite cities after Chicago. And I was very happy to be there. Adelaide is, a very beautiful city. So, so this was the first one. The second reason I liked the theme, because it was very deeply relevant to the pandemic times that we were living in. In India, things were pretty bad. I experienced personal losses, like we lost a couple of our childhood friends. Like I lost my childhood friend, relations to the pandemic. So it was a very grim reminder of where we were. And with that reminder, Jackie and we wanted to do something, maybe to make a kind of bring a sense of a smile to our faces, to everyone's faces, maybe infuse humor into our works, so our characters were very quirky and maybe happy and doing crazy things. But we also wanted to show how the pandemic had affected the human nature in different ways. And finally, working with Jackie was an incredible experience. I think we were like, twin souls. We kind of knew how to complete each other's sentences, how to complete each other's works. And I truly felt that even when I met her, finally in Australia. Let me just show you the next slide. So this is how we kind of were very formal in the beginning. And then by the time we got together, so, that was the one, just a couple of pictures. Now, how did we work? Well, so because Jackie and I were in different continents, so Jackie would send me her pieces. I would send my painted pieces. So it was more like a lot of, actually Jackie was very great in this way, because she said, you go ahead, I don't mind you cutting up the work. I said, are you sure? And she said, yeah, do it. And that's how we worked on it. So it was like I said, it was like a jigsaw puzzle. So sometimes Jackie would, think about how to fix it. I will also take some time. Some pieces took longer than usual. And so they were more like paper collages, which we finally kind of glued together. And so this is how it looked in its raw form. So you can see the painted part is mine. And I was, a lot of my work, which I do, it draws a lot of references from, what should I say, a lot of fantasy animals, a lot from my Indian miniatures, what I call the composite animal. Like you talk about a camel, which is composed of human beings. So I had taken those ideas and put that in my work. And Jackie was more like observing human nature at close quarters. And then this is a couple of paintings, a couple of works that we did. As you can see, the titles, it was a little crazy, a little wacky, and somehow it went perfectly well with the works. So like you can see the first one, Gotcha, which is there in the promos as well. Foolscape, Madame Defarge. I hope you can see those pictures. So for every one of them, I don't know, but we just somehow found the titles and they just perfectly went with the pictures. I think it was very intuitive, like I said before. I'll just show you a few more. This is, I think, one of my favorite pieces because for two reasons. It was the pandemic, and I was like literally inside the house. We couldn't even go out. There had to be special permissions. Police were always, keeping us in control and showing us the eye card. And I think it affected me a bit. So this work really kept me longer than other works. And I was very happy how it, came out. Then this is the one which Judith just showed on the front cover. And so like I said, we wanted to make it, like Andrea is also showing in those slides. So like I said, we wanted to make it quirky. We wanted to make it fun and horsing around. There is two more. And then, so you can see, so Jackie worked, I also forgot to mention, she worked on styrofoam plates. So she used a lot of that relief prints in her work. And so her work was also very intuitive, how she wanted to keep adding things to it. So in that way, we were perfectly, I think, on the same page and everything. And I think that's about it. So let me just stop sharing the screen. Of course, if you have any questions, do let me know. I know my voice is a bit croaky, but I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, that was great. Thank you. And we'll do the questions after, but I think there's someone else who wanted to do a presentation.
Yes, thank you so much. I know I have very, very little time, but I'll try to make this as quick as possible. Let's see if I can share my screen here. And my apologies for the delay here. I just should try, my apologies here. Desktop, downloads, sister page, city. Let's see if I can open this real quick. Thank you for your patience. I hope everybody's doing well. Slideshow. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay. In this presentation, I'm going to be reading in part from the statement Gail and I submitted in the catalog for the exhibition, but I would like to begin, that's there, but I'd like to begin by showing some of the earlier works on handmade papers. These were on traditional papers made on Japanese fibers such as gampi. My work with invasive plants began when I received a residency at Bernheim Research Forest in Kentucky in 2018. Because the forest was overrun with tree of heaven, an invasive species, I decided to collect it and use it on my paper. So here are some images of the process. So, oh yeah, harvesting, beating, sheet forming, and some of the end results. The fibers were very strong, and I was able to print on sheets that were incredibly thin. Other sustainable fibers that I've been making include jute, which is eco-friendly and sustainable because it needs very little water and intervention to grow and replenish. So I was first interested in participating in the Sister City project by the opportunity to collaborate with Gail again. When I first saw her work, such as shifting interior cavities and transmuted state of being, I was drawn to how they explored our connection to the environment and blurred the distinction between our micro and macro world, thus giving viewers reason to see things anew. As our new relationship grew and some of our pieces began to emerge, I became increasingly aware of my interest in climate change and sustainability. Faced with my heightened awareness of my use of materials, I sought only papers made from invasive plants and print with water-based inks. We are re-examining our own responsibility towards social and environmental events that surround us. Taking cues from invasive plant species, we immerse ourselves in their ephemeral and fragile materials, which reveal unexpected insights in the tenuous position we hold as humans. This work, Borderless, creates a tension and uneasy space in which tangled thorns reveal spaces and shadows of unspoken fears, evoking a sense of vulnerability. Large paper sheets were made completely from invasive plants with the intention of then becoming a sustainable replacement for modern day wallpaper. The idea came from a discussion regarding mankind's desire for unnecessary ornate decoration. This could be a new and more environmentally friendly alternative. I wish I had a big picture of this sheet of paper. I was so proud of it. It was so big. And just amazing. And gosh, I wish I could show you making the sheet of paper. So fun. I have recently began making paper for another invasive plant in a pond from a pond in Virginia, yellow flag iris. Because I'm also beating this plant in the beater, the resulting paper is extremely brittle. Due to its dark color, I began experimenting with longer washing times. As I move forward, I also supplement the batches with Abaca to strengthen the future sheets. Ultimately, the Sister City project has given me the opportunity to develop and learn more about my personal practice and make connections with other artists from around the world. So thank you so much to Andrea, Judith, and this opportunity to be part of the Salon. So thank you all so much. I tried to zoom through that, but please ask me questions. I left a lot out, but gosh, this has been such an amazing experience. So thank you all so much.
Thanks, Rachel.
Hey, well, that's great. Thank you. And that was speedy too.
I think we're at 8:30 exactly. So
yeah, well, was there anyone else who wanted to present? Andrea?
No, that was all the people today.
Okay, then we have half an hour, and I'm going to put my view back on the gallery, and we can all talk. Hello, everybody again. Turn on your video if you'd like, and let's hear some comments and maybe some questions.
I thought it was wonderful.
Okay, who's going to start? Nancy, I saw your screen lighting up there. No?
Yeah, well, I just thought it was wonderful. I thought the collaboration, with so much physical distance between people, and yet there was a mindset that was very, very overarching for everyone. And the installation looked wonderful. You could just feel the energy from this project. I really loved it.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Nancy.
So did I, and I don't. Would this have happened? I wondered if it wasn't for COVID. You started. When did you start again?
So I did the first project 2016, 2018.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
Yeah.
and then I was being pestered so much by people. We want to do it. We want to do it. And it's like, okay. It was such a huge job, but I thought it was worth doing again.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just the timing. But, you know, I think it actually became way more intense time. And, you know, it forged some real diamonds this time, in my opinion. Just beautiful, strong work and wonderful relationships. You just, you know, you couldn't do that maybe if it wasn't for COVID. So that, I think that probably helped. Everyone had a different understanding and empathy for everyone's situation. Yeah, it just made everyone a lot closer, I think.
I was wondering if we could hear also maybe from other artists in here in Ottawa.
Someone has their hand raised. There's a yellow hand there.
Oh, there's a yellow hand raised. Okay, Christine, you're very polite. Thank you.
She needs to unmute.
There we go. I maybe didn't catch all of what Rachel was saying. It was a little quick. But I'm kind of interested in that idea of the invasive species being selected to make the paper. I wonder if you could elaborate why the invasive species in particular.
Yes. Well, thank you for your question. I studied with a brilliant paper maker. You should all look him up, Timothy Barrett. He wrote what I would consider the Bible on paper making, both Japanese and European. And he would always say any paper can be made out of anything cellulose. And while you know, while traditional papers, Japanese papers, are made out of Mitsumata, Gampi, and Kozo because the fibers are all very long. Again, yeah, you can make out a paper out of anything cellulose. And you know, I said at the end of my presentation that these papers are very brittle. And I could go on and on and on about, you know, just the adventures of this project. But the invasive fibers are very tough. So all plant fibers are usually beaten by hand, but these fibers are very tough. And so I admit, I tried beating them by hand and they just wouldn't break up. So I ended up having to beat them with a beater. And I asked, but that broke down their fiber length, which is why I'm supplementing them with Abaca. But to go specifically to your question, why invasives? Because there's a lot of there's a lot of this fiber. But there's a reason that people haven't used them is because they're a tough fiber. And so I've had to troubleshoot how to use this fiber, but yeah, there is a lot of it. So there's been a process of me figuring out how best to use it. There's, you know, so there's reasons why that there are traditional fibers, but it is a very, there's a sufficient amount of this cellulose fiber to go around. I just started making it with Johnson grass, and the paper looks like a graham cracker, but I'm figuring it out.
Okay.
So thank you for your question.
Yeah, Valerie?
I just want to say that there's invasive species because the climate has changed. So like in North America right now, we're having a lettuce, very expensive lettuce, because lettuce didn't grow because of the high temperatures. So that's where invasive species are fitted into climate change.
I think it would be hard to make art these days that would not touch on climate change. Would anyone agree with that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's in us, isn't it? It's invading us.
Yeah, and like I have changed the focus on research in art, and it's actually called now via links artists for systems change, because I think it does affect all our work. And it is something that you just have to talk about, and maybe still isn't talked about and made art about too much. I don't know.
I was thinking, actually, as people were talking, if I can jump in here.
Yeah.
I wondered if we still need archival paper, if there will in the future be no more archives. Like, I just really, I think that the paper maker has a really good point in that she's writing the next book about how to make paper with what actually is available, because we're not going to have, I don't think, the luxury of these fine materials anymore. And so, yeah, I sit in my studio now, and I don't know about the rest of you, but I swing between rage and just sort of, I don't know what I'm doing anymore, because I just really don't understand how things are going to be fitting in. I've made a little series actually of go bag art, and so it comes in a little 2.5-inch container, and it's a little art collection in there, and you put that in your go bag with your important papers and your survival gear, because that's the only way I can see of packaging art for the future. And so I'm just, maybe some of you can address, like, the work is beautiful. I really enjoyed looking at it. But hearing the fire and the catastrophe that's all around, was there any rage or anger in any of this process?
You are asking Bronwyn, you are
just in general.
Oh,
because like I don't want to presume on anyone's practice, and I don't know if anyone actually dealt with that. So if someone has, I'd love to hear.
Bronwyn has her hand up. Yes, Bronwyn, can you unmute yourself? No, you need to unmute. We can't hear you. Unmute. No.
Yeah, sorry. I thought I had, but I didn't. I just wanted to say, I felt like during the pandemic, the arts did not get any financial support. The government at the time acted as though it did not exist, even though it's a multi-billion-dollar industry in Australia. We're getting cancelled all the time. So I actually made a lot of my work out of completely ephemeral stuff. I did many proofs on newsprint, and I used the newsprint to make a lot of the clothing. I made my print out of my old wedding dress, which otherwise would go to a secondhand shop or end up in the trash bin. I just gathered sticks up from the sidewalk, from people's properties. I wrapped them all in the newsprint, and I left all the sticks behind because there was no way really for me to get them back to Melbourne. I just worked on the basis I could just make more. So I regarded myself as something that's regarded by the rest of society as not a useful person or having a useful occupation, and that my work is completely ephemeral. So that was my response to that situation.
That I really agree with. I have my doubts about archives for sure.
Yeah.
And also, about what to do with your own work. I am getting pretty old here, as you can see. And so we have been dusting my paintings and making a list. That was my work. I'm still doing it. And wondering what's going to happen next. When is it going to go to the dump? But I don't want to put it on the dump because it's at least I want it to be recycled somehow. So if anyone has any ideas on that, it's my big question right now.
And I can say that my original plan for the sticks was to have a big fire at the end and film it. That's what my idea was. But I didn't get to do
of all the carbon you're sending in the air.
Yeah, I know. It didn't happen, and it was more of a gesture and maybe it could have been on a cold night to keep us warm, so it wouldn't be completely pointless. So.
Are there? Yes, Glenn.
I kind of let my characters get angry and stomp around and get frustrated and feel oppressed by the situation and find their breakthroughs. So they did that for me.
Mhm. Yeah, and
So that was fun. I mean, not that I wasn't pretty irritated, but we had a subversive outdoor activity group that would meet in corners of Halifax where we wouldn't be violating anything technically, and we'd work out, and it was great outdoors. So all through the cold and all through the heat and all through everything. So between my characters and my outdoor active group, I at least found a way to place that enormous frustration, that rage.
Mhm.
So yes, I did experience it.
Mhm.
In terms of the anger and in terms of the rage, did anybody find that the opportunity to be able to go into a working space, especially for those of us who have studios at home, the idea that it became very meditative, that you got into a flow, you got into a zone, and you got to at least escape temporarily, the pandemic and all the sort of climatic chaos that was going on every continent. How did you, I see some heads bobbing up and down. Do people agree?
Yeah, I'd like to hear from Shantala about that, because, also where you are, it was just so horrible in India, and it's probably still is. So how, yeah.
Well, I think when we had the first wave, it was a bit difficult because there were no, availability of oxygen masks. People were just dying. There was, huge body of like funerals happening. So, but then, and that was alarming, suddenly every second mattered. And like I said, I had mentioned my childhood friend died because she, she couldn't get enough oxygen. So those things were happening around us. And so I think, you have to kind of maybe hold on to some hope, hold on to something, whatever was left of it during that time. Now coming back after the pandemic, because now, like I said, I'm a teacher, I teach children. It's almost as if none of this happened. So it's a very peculiar kind of a scenario now. Like everything's completely changed. But yes, back then it was quite, and I'm grateful that we were at least able to reflect on what was happening and able to do our work. So in fact, I would say, I think I did a lot of productive work during those 2 years of the pandemic. I feel more than I would have ever done during my non-pandemic years. And of course, having these monthly meetings with all my sisters, I really looked forward to that, because that was the only way to connect with everyone across the world. So yeah.
Thank you. Just in terms of documentation, I have a comment. The catalog is amazing. Does it exist in printed form as well as the PDF that was shared with us?
Yes, it
Okay,
does.
good. Okay.
I've got a couple of boxes. if you would like a hard copy, I'm more than happy to send some to you if you would like.
I'm quite happy with the PDF. I find it's a really good presentation, but I also wanted to let everybody here know that someone let me know about a database called ecoartdatabase.org, that if anybody wants to share their work on that site. I can't seem to access the chat, so I'm going to ask Judith if I send her the information later, if you'd be willing to share it with the people in Australia. And I'll share it with the people here. But it's called ecoartdatabase.org. And there are no fees to get onto the database. So for all of us artists who are working on a very limited budget, it was nice to know.
Well, what time is it? Let me see.
I just want to say that hearing Gillian speak, hearing Shantala speak, hearing Rachel speak, Gwen and Bronwyn, you know, I'm still learning stuff about what was, you know, spurring your work, the details of what you did. In the case of Gillian and Lindy, I couldn't read those words. You know, I had on your lengthy piece, the I can't remember what it's called, but I think you know which one I'm talking about, the sort of panoramic one. You know, Shantala, I didn't know that you had lost so many people close and dear to you. And Rachel, I think, you know, I had heard most of what you explained before, but again, Bronwyn and Gwen, yeah, I heard things that I heard for the first time. So I really appreciate hearing that. And also, as Shantala was saying, you know, just to be reminded, it's almost as if it didn't exist. I mean, now I understand a lot more why people didn't want to talk about their experiences in the Second World War or in the Holocaust or whatever. You just want to move beyond it. At least I'm still in that phase. Or, you know, maybe 10 years from now, it'll be different. But yeah.
Yes, but I also think that there is no way back. We can't return to the way things were ever. And we have to adapt, and not only to adapt, but to invent new ways of looking at things and new ways of making art and new ways of distributing it. And that is our task, I think, you know. Yeah, I don't have a lot of faith in preservation. I call it the old order. We still have to take care of it. You can't just drop it. You can't make a change just like that. But there is always that thing, then the whole idea that things should be different and we need to change the systems, including the art system, especially the art system. But you are not a system, you're an artist. You may be part of a system, but you can create the change. So that, you know, that's just my little word here in here. And was there someone else? Oh yeah, Glenn.
I wanted to say, as I've been speaking tonight, I realized that for me, it's always been about subversion. And I think of subversion as poking people in a place that makes them uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And so they need to pay attention. And that's been the theme of my life, I suppose. And I have a picture on my wall, stained glass window, and under it, it says, "We must all become outlaws." And I think the time is coming for that. And I think that was a conscious and unconscious theme of a lot of what people were doing, was poking in a way that you had to pay attention differently. Yeah. And I think that's what art does. So there's times when nobody wants to hear that. Mm-hmm. And, you know, this is probably one of those times.
Mm-hmm.
I think even saying an invasive species is always pejorative. It's, you know, we have to get rid of that. And yet you're transforming it, and in the process also saying something quite profound about the ecology that we're in right now.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
All right. Is there, I'm just looking at all the guests here, and as ever, I am wondering and worried why we are all women. Where are the men?
Well, it's a women's project.
Yeah, here's Renee on the background, right? But he's not.
It was a women's project, this thing.
It wasn't a women's project, no. It just happens to be like that because that's how we end up with only women. But is that the same? I guess it's the same in Australia. Eh? Yeah.
Well, and that's what I said earlier about, you know, there's so many women in the arts.
Yeah.
Yet we get the least amount of attention.
Yes.
And that's what I'm on about. Putting ourselves forward a bit more.
Good. Well,
yeah, that's my version, Gwen. Yeah.
Well,
Letting us know.
I just have a question. I know, Bronwyn, you were saying there was no support for artists in Australia. I feel there was support for artists in Canada, but I want to know if other artists feel that this was the case. I know musicians certainly got support at one point.
Mm-hmm.
No comments from any artists in Ottawa? No. Or Quebec, because there's some people in Quebec? Nope. Okay.
There's one thing I could share, Judith. Being a visual artist myself and knowing several artists here in Ottawa, because of the money we were getting from the government, some monthly support because of the situation. For many of us, this was a really happy time of seclusion, isolation, work, deep connection to things, and loneliness, which a lot of artists enjoy, myself included. So when that support was gone and now we're being asked to pay it back, it's like, gosh, you know, how come the big gas businesses haven't been asked to pay back what was given to them, but the artists that were given a tiny support are being asked this now. So, you know, I've heard this from several people here in Ottawa as a very good time for production and for research and you know, good quality time in terms of creativity.
Why are you being asked to return the money that you received? What's that about?
Because they're saying there was a mistake and the amount was wrong. So they're giving us the facility to pay back in monthly installments. To put too much pressure.
Wow.
Yeah, they're asking us to pay it back, which is like,
wow.
I hope people get organized and protest. That's outrageous.
I didn't know about this, Maria, and I'm not surprised because, I mean, isn't that the same government that screwed up the whole tax system? And anyway, what was that again, Renee? Yeah, the Phoenix scandal. Anyway, that's
a payroll, government payroll system.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So when you asked about artists in Quebec, Judith, I more than a few musicians have said, "Wow, I've never had so much regular income in my life," because it's knowing that what you were getting every month. Like, we're so unused to. I remember Peter Zelski on CBC one time saying, like, "Oh, you know, people are really worried. They have to they have to keep trying to get contracts," or, you know. And I think also when the pandemic started, most of us artists went, "Yeah, we are used to being alone. We are used to we're used to manufacturing our lives and being responsible for them in a way that a lot of people aren't." But anyways, these musicians, I know, like, as you know, where I live is full of artists and musicians, and they were just saying, like, they were actually saying, they were using the word guilty. I feel guilty for having this money. And there were people that had unfinished records who took the time to practice so much because they knew they could grocery shop, they could order meals out, they were like small grants, you know. And this one woman I know, she got so much into her personal practice that this record that she had put, this recording that she had put so much work on, she just about, and paid for sessions too, almost let it go. I mean, I know people have said to me, it's been so intense that now when I look back at what my old work is, it isn't really relevant or isn't fitting anymore. Like, I think that the pandemic, much like motherhood, there is no going back to normal. Once you become a mother and you're used, I remember cross-country skiing with my brother, and my kid was like 2, and I said, man, when is it going to get back? I mean, it's a long time ago, but he goes, no, there is no getting back to normal. This is life now. Like, and so I look at the pandemic like that, and I did use my savings and was working with Radical Connections, but I still think that for a lot of people, it was a really period of growth and a taste of security and a time to learn the necessity of letting go.
But why didn't that just transpire that they would think a universal basic income was the natural next step?
And that didn't happen because our governing people are too conservative. Isn't that the reason? And they are too conservative in most countries now, so it's frustrating for sure. Yeah. Is there anyone who wants to end on a more optimistic note?
I guess in terms of, I had a question from Andrea. In terms of the project, all of the work and all of the incredible things that happened, what support did you have from the government? Did you have grants? Did you have means to pay art? Absolutely zero. Okay, this is one thing I find about women's initiatives, that women, when we come up with an idea, we just push forward. We just do it. It has to be done. And so I applaud you, because I did have that question in the back of my head. All of this energy and all of this work and all of this beautiful creation, and you did it for, if I understood this, zero?
Pretty much.
Right.
The artists contributed a very small amount each. We did a GoFundMe, which didn't really reap particularly much money. And we got discount through the gallery. So it was a discounted higher rate. But apart from that, it was not funded at all. And so things like the catalogue, I taught myself how to design and made the catalogue. So yeah, pretty much it was just the love of it. And I try as you might to get grants, which I applied for. Not interested.
I think it doubly. I think what you've done doubly shows that the care and attention and the commitment that you all have had to doing this project, because I've seen way too many artists say, well, if I get the funding, I'll do this, and you've just gone ahead and done it. So kudos to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Dawn. Yeah, it was worth every moment of struggle. Really was.
Andrea, did you get feedback when you said there was no help, no interest at all? What at the places that you did apply to, were they the type of organizations that would still give you the time of day in terms of feedback? Like, was there
sure. Yeah. So the local funding body, which is Arts SA, they won't fund any part of a project that isn't solely about South Australian artists. And so even if they were to award any money, it could only be applied to South Australian artists. And if you've got 18 artists across the world, obviously that money's going to be split between them. So they're not going to give you any money because they don't want the money to go to anybody else, even though clearly it is of great benefit to the artists for their connections. They just couldn't get past the ridiculous rules that they've got in place for that. I applied at the Australia Council. The government virtually decimated that funding area, and so very competitive. But I think I was told I kind of missed out by 1 or 2 in the ranking. So we were close, but there's just not enough money to go around.
Well, maybe next time, because you have such a beautiful, you have total proof of concept. You have buy-in, you have international interest. And Don and I were in a land art show in the 90s, and I live in Quebec. Don lives in Quebec too. But the group had Ontario, it was, if I remember correctly, we got Ontario Arts Council funding, and there was someone in it from New York. But the money, I mean, we all knew that like only the money came, and the money from the Ontario Arts Council only could go to the artists from Ontario. But it lightened the load, and like there wasn't a jealousy or anything. But I guess we had to say that to them. I don't know who wrote that, because I was on the Quebec side. But anyways, I think you have great proof, and if you apply again, you've done 2 shows, and I keep going. You have proof about that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm not sure right now whether I have the strength to do this again. Maybe I might actually invite a curator. Rather than me being the curator, I could perhaps extend it in that way. That was a thought, because it's a huge amount of work, and my practice got pushed right back. So I need to get back into my own practice. But yeah, I was thinking about maybe inviting a curator to curate the next one.
Or maybe something as direct as like someone getting credit for like business management or public, like maybe someone who would handle the business side of it. And because really, once you get the selection, I mean, the curation is the picking of the people, right? I'm asking.
Yeah, that's true. I guess when I say curation, because I'm so used to doing everything. Yes, but you're right. You're right. That's true. I could still do that, but have the management of it done by somebody else. Yeah. But then I've got to be able to pay them. And if I don't get funding.
I've done 2 projects where I said to the lead, wow, it would be so great to have an MA student. And in 2 cases, we had someone working on their master's in sociology. And so this person came on, this like eager 26-year-old, and took care of so much stuff. And the meat of the project was done by the artist and the church council justice person who was a wise elder woman. But it was just that so much of the work could be done, which included setting up an archive and contacting people. And you've got a how-to book written out, like you've done it. You really do just need like a.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
You can do it.
I think this is one of the, I think this is one of the elements, is the idea of having some sort of archive that carries on the spirit of the project, and so but that's difficult, because in terms of the a PDF is you still had all that design work that had gone into the catalog, and trying to get the catalog out there. But the online social media, I'm wondering, in terms of, because we are a gray-haired set for the most part, in terms of your social media presence, is that another element that you've done with the project?
Yeah, we did. We had our own page, Facebook, Instagram. Everyone was, madly sharing it on socials. The catalogue went into the National Library here, and also the local library, but it's a required deposit you have to do, which is great. We didn't go on TikTok, because I think Bronwyn was good at that, but not me. Not something that I'm kind of, I don't like it. But yeah, it's we did as much as we could.
Yeah, a lot of artists, of course, have now gone to Instagram, and it might be something that a lot of artists do pursue here. And it's just one thing. It's there's so much out there that we have to, you know, choose something and stick together somewhere. So probably Instagram is it right now. Dawn, what do you think?
I think it has certain benefits. I use it with my students in terms of research, trying to find out, you know, what's happening, but it's also the idea again of creating archives. So I would love to have the Instagram address that was used for this project to be able to go back and look at some of the the history and some of the presence that and it'll remain as an archive online.
Yes.
You know, for the odd person to find, like me.
Talking about archive, at one point, Petra, I think you asked me for a list of all the artist pairs in the exhibition. And I'm wondering how we might, you know, so that most artists have a website and those who don't have a website have another way of being contacted. I'm just wondering, since this is being recorded and archived in some way or another, can we include that list somehow?
Yeah, I don't know. I have a big question here. I am really not that tech savvy. And I was wondering if there isn't someone who could take on to like continue with this too, in a way. And yeah, I don't know. Is this something we could think about and set up, or should we decide it now? I don't know. I can't tell you. I can't promise.
And I'm a student, a film studies student, a journalism student. They all have to take these media courses, right? So when we did that piece for the hospital, there was this guy who's a festival organizer, but was a total, you know, could do it all. He could just like stick the title on it and stick the page on it. I mean, there are people who do that and it's nothing because they have the hardware and that's what they do. They could not do what anybody else in this whole group does. You know, it's just finding someone from who like in the CJEP programs, there's media studies. So somebody who's in media studies. At the University of Ottawa, there's the Michèle Jean Foundation. And I know that, for instance, the Being Studio got a whole bunch of public relations and, you know, not the kind of work we want to do, but the kind of work that needs to be done to support it. I mean, look to the universities for people who need work experience with mature, successful elders. And, you know, they gain experience by exposure and we gain their services.
That's true. So in Australia, the same thing would hold if you were to contact a university with, you know, they might be able to help you in that way.
And it's not like I'm making it up. Last week, 2 weeks ago, I attended the virtual day of the National Organization in Arts and Health Conference. And there were all these stellar cases there. It was American, but there were people from many countries attending. There was a 4-day conference, and then you could, you know, pay only some $100 instead of many hundred and go. The organization Radical Connections paid for it. But anyways, at this virtual conference, there were many different kinds of presenters about art and health, and not just for elders, but for young people or Black people who had hair repetitive actions. Were they picking? I mean, there were so many different kinds of things, but more than once I heard people say, no, it isn't your responsibility to find the science. Hook up with research students, hook up art. You know, they were telling the artists there, if you want your work to go further, pick up with, team up with the research people. You will find research people. So you will each be supporting each other. Like, we can't make systems change on our own. We have to work in interdisciplinary cross-sectoral ways. We can't be responsible for spreading the message ourselves, just like you're doing with your environmental things, and Dawn's awareness that we have to really pay attention to how the finance structures work.
This sounds like a whole other topic that we could spend a few times on.
Yeah,
agreed.
It's a headset, really. I'm allowed to go and say, you know,
I think we need to have a new group.
At least I have a Google label that says Salon 13, and I can reach you all. So if you have any ideas, just let me know and we can continue the conversation in some other way. I like your ideas of, you know, using some part of the internet to continue this. It certainly the evening is coming to an end here, I have to say. And in Australia, they have to get on with their Saturday morning chores or something, or go back to the studio.
Go back to sleep for some of them.
Yeah, that's true. But I really would like to thank you all. I think you just restored my faith in Zoom meetings. I was really so fed up with it, but this is great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Pet.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming
Thank
along.
you.
Lovely to meet you all.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the project.
Thank you very
Andrea.
much, everybody.
That was grand.
Good
Real
night.
thrilled to see you all again.
That was really great. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Maria?
It's still there.
Okay, thank you so much still. You know,
Yes.
I know you.
Will we be able to get that link? Because it didn't even show up.
Which link are you referring to?
The
Novella, she was.
yes.
I saw it on mine, Patricia.
Yes, I saw it, but when you click on it, you kind of got a very bizarre framework. It would
Oh, I
work
see
better
what
in
you
an email.
mean. Yeah.
Would it be
It's all
possible
over the
to
place,
email
huh?
it to Petra and she would email it to us, maybe?
Sure. That will be much easier. I didn't catch this chat